In this video, I'm going to give you 3 tips for getting thrifty with tomatoes. Hello and welcome back, or if you've not been here before, on this channel we're all about looking at how to make savings, save a little bit of money by growing food, by cooking food, and by getting a bit creative about living a lower cost life. And this week I've been thinking about different ways that us gardeners and cooks can make the most of our tomato crop. So here's 3 tips for you. Thrifty tip number 1 is to pick your tomatoes before they're fully red so that you'll get more crops and faster ripening. When you're growing your own tomatoes, you don't need to wait until they're bright red before you remove them from the vine. So if they're just almost red, say 80% for these larger tomatoes, 90% red for the cherry style tomatoes, they can be picked and just bring them indoors, keep them in a warm place. So I've put mine here in a brown paper bag, or just wrapped in a tea towel in a bowl, somewhere a bit covered so the insects don't get on them. Ideally with some other tomatoes that are ripe, and you'll find that very quickly those green tomatoes will turn as red as the others, and this takes the pressure off the vines so they can keep on producing more fruit. And believe it or not, the earlier you pick your tomatoes, the quicker the green ones will get red on the vines, so it really speeds things up. And you might find that at the end of the season you don't have quite so many green tomatoes that haven't made it, depending on the weather of course. So that's thrifty tip number 1. Pick your tomatoes before they're bright red and you'll have a larger crop. Thrifty tip number 2 is a cooking tip. Next time you've got your oven on and you've got a tomato crop in, just pop in the oven a tray of your freshly grown tomatoes and roast them up with some herbs and some olive oil, and then freeze them for really fast breakfasts and quick suppers. So that's thrifty tip number 2, and that's to use a time when your oven's already on to pre-roast some tomatoes for delicious meals later. And my final thrifty tip, number 3, is all about saving and keeping it simple really. So tomatoes in the UK are really expensive food, with many of them imported from Europe. So if you're able to grow tomatoes, I think it's a really good crop to grow, even if you've got a very small space. And if you get that nice crop of tomatoes and you're not sure what to do with them and you have a glut, you can just very simply freeze your tomatoes. And an extra tip, if you later think you may want tomatoes that are skinned, freezing them with a little bit of extra care can make for super easy skinning of the tomatoes later when they're defrosted. So let's show you how to do it. So that's my final tip. Keep it simple. Freeze your tomatoes whole. Couldn't be simpler. And if you want to do something a little bit extra to get them peeled, just remember to make that cross in the bottom, get them in the freezer, and then they'll be ready to go. So I hope you enjoyed those 3 tomato tips and that you'll be trying some of those out this weekend. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe, which really helps the channel grow. And I'll be back next week with another video on the theme of growing food, cooking food and learning to live a lower cost life. Have a good week.